In the last video about effective feedback, we looked at the first 2 points here. Feedback that addresses what is correct and specifies what students need to do next, and feedback that is given in an appropriately timely way. The next key is to provide feedback that is criterion-referenced. This is somewhat related to the first point, but the emphasis is on addressing the knowledge and the skills, not the student himself. This is somewhat similar to the current educational emphasis on a growth mindset. That is, you want to avoid making the comments about the student, saying things like, "You're really smart," or "You pick up things quickly," or "You aren't working." This type of comment makes students think that their success or failure is something inborn and unchangeable. It's like if I told a 5-foot-tall boy, "You're too short to dunk a basketball." That's not something he could change, so there's not much point in him trying to learn how to dunk. We want the students to focus instead not on their natural strengths and weaknesses, but on specific things they can do to improve. Learning is not just a matter of natural ability, but of exerting the right kind of effort in the right ways. So our feedback should tell students what that effort looks like. That is, don't say, "You're smart," but say, "Your paragraph shows that you understand what a topic sentence is and that you know how to develop that topic with supporting details." Or, "You have some inaccurate information here. Check the facts again." Rubrics are helpful for this. Here are a couple of examples. The first one deals with skill development. So in this case, the skill is being able to play a C major scale, 2 octaves on a piano, 2 hands, with both hands and going at a metronome marking of a quarter note at 60. For you non-musicians, just ignore all the jargon. But the thing is, it specifies here are the standards. If you're unsatisfactory, you make 5 or more errors doing that. If you're at a basic level, you're making 2 to 4 errors. If you're proficient, you can do that and you have 1 error, but I would still consider you proficient. Superior, you can do that with no errors. So that's a skill type rubric. You also have content knowledge rubrics. Here's another example. If you're studying the life of Johann Sebastian Bach, well, an unsatisfactory would be that you know fewer than 7 important facts about the life of Bach. Basic, you know 7 to 9 important facts. Proficient, you know 10 to 11 important facts. Superior, you know 12 or more important facts about the life of Bach. So you see, these things specify what the different levels mean. So you have different types of rubrics for skills than for content, but both make it clear what the levels of achievement are. As a result, students can see what they need to do to get to the next level of achievement. If I'm working on playing a C major scale on the piano, if I get a basic, then I see, oh, well, I need to get to where I can cut down to just 1 error if I want to be proficient. I've got to cut down the mistakes, but I know exactly what I need to do, what the performance needs to be. That guides how I practice and how I improve. Likewise with the other rubrics. The point is, you want your feedback to students to direct them toward specific criteria for success rather than just telling them, "Good job." Educator Alfie Kahn once said about that statement, the only appropriate response the child could give to that would be, "Woof." The use of rubrics then leads to the last element of effective feedback. Engage students in the feedback process. When you're pointing students to external, well-defined criteria for their work, you're enabling them to begin to give themselves feedback. They can start learning how to compare their own work to the criteria and how to look for ways to improve. This will lead to the oft-stated desire for students to become lifelong learners. We don't want our students to have to rely on the teacher all the time to tell if they're doing well or not, or to figure out how to improve. We want them to gain the ability to examine their own work, compare it to a desired standard, and develop a plan to reach that standard. One way this can be done is through peer feedback. Have students give each other suggestions for improving work. Of course, this is something that will take some training. And to be clear, you're not asking students to grade each other's work. Peer feedback is not what you do when you have students exchange spelling quizzes for grading, for example. Remember, proper feedback is not just telling the student, you got 3 wrong, you got 7 right. It's pointing him to specific standards or criteria and helping him compare his work to those criteria. And that's what peer feedback does. As students are giving feedback to one another, they're learning how to give feedback to themselves. You could introduce this to your class by asking them some questions like this and getting some input from them. What types of comments are helpful to you? What types of comments don't really help you? What types of comments are hurtful to you? So then they might say, well, if somebody just says, good work, it helps me feel better, but it doesn't help me know what was good about my work. Or they might say that when somebody says, try harder, that doesn't really help. Or they might say that when people make a comment like, try starting your sentences with different words, I mean, they all start then Billy, then Sue, then Billy, that type of comment really is helpful to me. So help them to see what types of comments would be helpful, what they see as helpful to themselves. That will then help them to see the types of comments they can give to each other. Then, when you give them an assignment, remind them of the standards or rubrics. You might give them a form like this one. A student could fill out the first 2 blocks. My learning objective for this assignment was, and then they state it. I would like specific feedback on, maybe the student says, I'm having a problem getting a topic sentence for my paragraph. So you might say, I would like specific feedback on my topic sentences. Then they give their work with this form to another student. And the other student fills out the 3rd and 4th blocks. What do you see that I did well? And what do you see that I still need to work on? Notice the phrasing here. This again helps the students to start giving constructive feedback to one another. Instead of saying what was good and what wasn't good, that can be unhelpful. Say, what do you see that I did well? That still helps the students get more specific. So this is one example of the type of form that you might have the students give to one another. There are also technology tools that can help with this. For example, your online learning management system might have a way to have an online discussion. So a student could post his first draft of a paragraph online, and then other students could give positive and constructive comments about it. Now remember that the point of this is for students to be able to improve their work. So when you give feedback, don't just have them do something, get feedback, and then move on to the next thing, unless the next thing is like a second level of the original work. For example, you have students write a paragraph on the early life of Johann Sebastian Bach. So they write the paragraph, they get feedback on it. Don't just then immediately go on to a different assignment analyzing the form of a Bach organ fugue. Instead, give them an opportunity to go back and improve their first paragraph. Or your second assignment might be ask them to write a paragraph about Bach's time in Weimar, remembering the things they learned on their other paragraph. But the point is you want them to take the feedback and then be able to put it into practice. Again, compare it to a basketball player practicing free throws. He's practicing the free throws. The coach comes along and gives him some instruction on the proper form. That's the feedback. Well, the coach doesn't then immediately say, okay, I gave you some instruction on that. Now let's go work on your layups. Instead, he says, okay, here's some things you ought to work on. Now, spend a few minutes working on that. Then we'll work on layups. So he gives him time to practice the proper form, to implement the feedback before he goes on to something else. So you need to give students an opportunity for that as well. So to wrap up this segment on feedback, Remember, we want to provide feedback that addresses what is correct and elaborates on what students need to do next. Provide feedback appropriately in time to meet students' needs. Provide feedback that is criterion-referenced, and engage students in the feedback process. Now, in the next segment of this course, we'll start looking at the importance of reinforcing effort and providing recognition.